Commission. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pursuant to the provisions of Section 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, notice is hereby given that if you are not satisfied with the decision made by the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission, you may appeal the decision by petitioning for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of the entry of the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission's decision. We advise that you seek your own independent legal advice to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met. The minutes from last month's meeting have been circulated to the commissioners. Is there a motion regarding approval of the minutes or any modifications?
Move for approval.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes to approve the minutes. The first substantive item on our agenda is a public hearing for consideration of a request for modification of taxicab Rule 20 to clarify the Music Valley Drive business area under the current rule. Mr. Fields.
In the current rule, the flat rate applies to the Opryland Music Valley area, and it specifically talks about addresses, for instance, on Music Valley Drive. Since this rule was passed several years ago, there's been additional commercial construction on Music Valley Drive as well as on McGavock Pike. What we're asking is that, and you'll see that all of Music Valley Drive as well as McGavock Pike from Briley back to Riverview, which is the street right before the Cumberland River at the back side of that loop at Opryland Music Valley Drive, that all be considered a part of the flat rate. I think the taxi cab companies have, for the most part, honored it because that was the intent of the commission several years ago when this was passed. But this just clarifies it, and it comes at the request of the merchants in the Music Valley Drive area.
Do we know what the meter rate would be otherwise?
I did not have the meter rate run. I apologize for that.
It's basically clarification of a rule that's already in existence, as I understand it then.
Is there a motion, fellow commissioners, regarding amending the current rule and clarify what areas of the Opryland commercial area falls under the flat rate?
Well, do we have to have the public hearing?
Thank you for bringing that to my attention. You're absolutely right. I don't have any requests before me to speak on this issue. Mr. Fields, are you aware of anyone?
I'm not.
Well, then this concludes the public hearing portion of our consideration.
You can ask if anyone would like.
Is there anyone from the audience who would like to speak on this issue? With that, is there a motion regarding the amendment to the rule?
I would move to modify Rule 20 as proposed to clarify the Music Valley Drive business area.
I would second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. The next item on our agenda involves wreckers. We have a general wrecker company application from A&Z Towing and Recovery with included applications for Mr. Hajar Hussain and Mr. Tariq Hussain.
We have a company application as well as the two owners. The company application is in order, and I've inspected the wrecker. Mr. Tariq Hussein's application is in order. Mr. Hajar has left a violation 2009. It was a probation violation that was left off his application based on your policies. We bring them to you for consideration. Other than that, there would be no reason. Everything else is in order for approval.
Is he not here?
We would ask defer action on that particular, on Mr. Hajar Hussein's application. Mr. Tariq Hussein is here.
So are we left with then approving the record application and his application to be a driver of record?
Yes, and they're both in order.
Given that they're in order, is there a motion regarding the application of A&Z Towing and Recovery and the application by Mr. Tariq Hussein?
I would so move that they be approved.
Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
All those in favor of granting a general record company application to A&Z Towing and Recovery and a driver application or driver permit to Mr. Tariq Hussein, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Is that he understands that, I assume it's a relative, that Hajar Hussein is not approved to drive the wrecker.
Yes.
And it's been deferred today until he shows up.
Sure.
Okay.
Did you make that as a motion, that we defer his till he could be present?
Is that your recommendation? I would move that Hajar Hussein's application to drive the record be deferred.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Hussein should appear next month for consideration of his driver application. If you could let your brother know. Next item on the agenda, we have a number of record driver applications from 13 individuals. Mr. Fields.
Yes, staff has reviewed all of the applications and it would include 12 drivers: Ishmael Barari, Aaron Brandon, Jeremy Carter, Jeffrey Clendenin, Kenneth Ford, David Horn, Melissa Loftus, James Maddox, Timothy Martin, Keith Rediker, Shalisi Tay, and Lewis Key. They've had application and staff recommends approval.
What about Grady Welch, 13?
I'm sorry, Grady Welch.
Is there a motion regarding approving those driver applications?
I would make a motion to approve those applications.
Second.
All those in favor of granting the driver applications for the individuals Mr. Fields just identified, say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item on the agenda, we have 2 taxi cab driver applications. The first one we'll consider is Mr. Fisha Gahibre. Mr. Fields.
Yes, Mr. Gahibre has been a driver in Nashville for several years. I don't think that Tax USA is here. Their manager asked me to let you know that if he is able to retain his permit, that he would be working for them. Mr. Gahibre in 2010 apparently had a charge that did not appear. When we reviewed his application this year with the new record check, he did not include a charge of domestic violence, which happened in 2010. He had applied twice since then, so it was just a matter of he left it off those 2 years. So we're bringing it to your attention that during those 2 renewal periods, he did not include that as a part of his record, and he is present. There have been no problems, no issues with him as a driver that I'm aware of.
Mr. Gahibre, if you could come forward, please.
I have some 2010 arrest domestic assault. It was that time. It was I don't do nothing. The case was closed, and my lawyer he told me, "This case is closed. You are clear." In the last 2 years, I don't have any checking, and I put up my ticket, just one ticket like that. And I didn't write it that because of he told me the case was dismissed and clear. And when I'm go, still the charge was on the case.
This is a letter from your attorney?
My attorney, yeah. That's misunderstand that.
It appeared in my conversations with Mr. Gahibre that he believed that the charges, that he didn't have to reveal them because the attorney said it was over. But as we know on the application, it requires that regardless of whether they're dismissed or not, you have to put them down. And he understands
He
that
told
now.
me he's dismissed. That's what
I understand.
realized that.
But he and I did talk about it, and he understands that now.
Mr. Gabri, from what I can tell, that was the only criminal charge you had against you, right?
Never.
Okay. And it was assault, domestic violence?
No, nothing.
I'm sorry, the charge against you, though, was assault.
That time?
Yes.
Yeah, they did.
And then it was retired on October 4th, 2010,
Yeah.
a few months after your arrest. Okay. Do you know what retired means?
No.
Okay.
He said just he told me just your case is closed and clean. He told me almost maybe a year, but still it's 3 years there.
All right. And so why didn't you put it on the application?
Application, but the last 2 years after he told me, just I write my ticket and both ticket, just one ticket I write it. But I didn't put it this one because of he gave me that information is clean, the case closed, your record is clean. That's what I'm thinking. I put it a ticket the last. Now I did the same thing. When I get fingerprint is coming. That's the case.
Okay. But no further problems since that case was retired or dismissed?
Maybe he cleaned, taken time, maybe 2 months or something. He asking for a judge. Still what the case is showing my record there.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Gahibre, were there any conditions to the retirement of the charge that you're aware of?
No.
I can say that on a records check of the Davidson County criminal justice system, it was just simply retired, not even upon payment of court cost or anything.
That one just family case was, that's what I did.
Thank you, Mr. Gahibre. You can have a seat.
Thank you.
See what Larry's calling. Suspension AA means.
When is that?
I don't know what that means. I know what it is.
What is that?
I don't know. This part makes sense here, but. Are we allowed to make public comment now, or make comments? I've read Mr. Felt's letter, and most of the paragraphs make sense to me, except for the second one, where there's some extra language in there that I don't understand. But it would appear that Mr. Gabri's case was retired at the request of the district attorney, according to Mr. Felt's letter, and that Mr. Feltz intended to have it expunged, which would be consistent with what Mr. Gabri is saying, that he thought it was going to be dismissed and then off his record. And Mr. Phelps indicates that he's in the process of getting that done now. So,
I make a motion that we approve
Second.
the application.
All those in favor?
aye.
Mr. Yehiber, your driver application's been reapproved. Mr. Fields, next, we have Mr. Degu Janka.
Mr. Jonka is in a similar situation. In 2012, he failed to disclose a domestic assault, and he also failed in 2007. He had a charge of driving on a suspended license. The new background check brought those forward, and as we reviewed, normally what we would do is review the previous applications to see if they were revealed at that point, because once we have them and refer to them each year. We did not find those. Other than that, his application was in order.
What is this repeated failure to satisfy citation?
My impression is what that would mean is that he had been given specific instructions on citations, like traffic citations, and did not come to court. I'm also assuming it could be as simple as not paying the fines. I'm getting some of that, so I think that's probably what happened.
Mr. Janka, if you could come forward, please.
Mr. Fields, what is it exactly he failed to disclose?
In 2000, he had charges in 2012 and 2007 that he failed to, he didn't disclose a domestic assault, and he didn't disclose a driving on a suspended license. Oh, these are the new, I'm sorry, these are the reapplications. The one, and I'll start including the other ones as well, but what you're looking at is application, you're looking at the second application, because we actually, once they fail to disclose, it's denied based on the failure to disclose, which is what the rule requires, then they begin the process again as a new driver.
Was he aware of the failure to disclose when he made the new application? I guess he would be, since...
Well, on the new, it's actually disclosed on the new application.
Yeah.
It just failed on the first application. What we, basically, when they come to the window to renew...
He's a new driver.
Oh, he's a new driver? Yeah. Okay, well, then he's failed to disclose, and now it's disclosed. I apologize.
So after you pointed out the fact that he did not disclose them and showed the background check, he then disclosed them.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
When was that first application made? July of 2013?
Yes.
Okay. So why didn't you disclose it?
My understanding was when they sent me to get a DMV, my driver record.
You speak up, please.
When I went to take my driver license record, DMV office, they gave me 3 years. After that's one the first time I understand it. So I just got 3 years of my driver license ticket, everything up to the most. So I didn't know that the whole thing since I got driver license, ticket, anything. I have to mention the paper. That's what I'm saying. After I just finished my course, I came to office to get my license. They told me you denied. I don't know why. That's the first time when I applied for driving part of taxing. Been here 11 years. I don't know.
Mr. Janka, if you could please speak in the microphone.
Okay.
The meeting is being recorded for television, so we want to make sure we're getting the audio component of your statement. We have a copy of your background check, Mr. Janka, and it looks like you were arrested for assault and domestic bodily injury on April 2012.
Correct.
And did you plead guilty to that offense of a lesser offense? It's not really clear to me if it's a lesser, but did you plead guilty to a misdemeanor assault, domestic bodily injury?
Yes, sir.
And you were sentenced with 11 months, 29 days suspended?
Yeah. I served everything.
And why didn't you disclose that arrest and conviction on your application?
Like I said, when I fill application first time, when I went to DMV to get my driver license record, and they gave me 3 years. That's my understanding. I thought only 3 years on based on driver license office gave me 3 years on my ticket speeding something. That's what told me. And I have no idea. I have to mention all of them, any criminal activity or driver license.
There you go. There you go. You take that.
That's why I just didn't mention.
Let me apologize. I'm going to admit my error at this point. On his application, he did disclose the domestic violence on the first one. What he did not disclose would have been the other charge, the suspended license issue in 2007. He did disclose it, and I apologize for that. And I missed that, and I apologize. And on his reapplication, everything is listed that I know that he could have listed.
So which instances did he not disclose?
The only instance that he would not have disclosed that I'm aware of, as we're reviewing it again, would have been in 2007 driving on a suspended license. And that was not a part of the original application. In his original application, he had April 2012 domestic violence, September 2012 traffic violation for speeding, and 2009 traffic violation for speeding. Those are the three that are there.
Without insurance on 2007 and 2011.
Mr. Jonka?
Yes, sir.
I'm looking at your second application right now, and that's the one where you hand wrote out 16 different citations, arrests that you had, okay? Number 13 says on April 1st, 2012, you were arrested for domestic violation. And then it has number 14 says 4 days later, April 5th, 2012, assault domestic misdemeanor.
There's two courts. This court and the other court. I don't know. I have an idea. So I would start over there and bring over here, pay both places,
I'm sorry, I don't understand your response. My question is, were you arrested 4 days apart in April of 2012 for assault and domestic violence?
Yeah, my wife, she called police. The police took me to jail over here in 4 days. Then I go to pre-court, criminal court, and they sentenced to 29 days and 11 months, and I got out from jail.
Mr. Fields, can I see the original? So you were arrested twice in April of 2012?
Not twice.
I think one was for appearance.
Okay.
No.
So you got arrested, you've listed your arrest, and then you're listing also your court appearance.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, in your original application, you had 3 matters that you listed, okay?
Yeah.
And then on your second application, we have 16.
Because, like I said, first time I applied, I have no idea, I don't have any information about that. I went to DMV to get my driver license record. They gave me like 3 years. I put 3 over there. And then the second time, they denied me after I passed my test, everything. When I reapplied for the second time, so they told me office you need to mention all
things, right?
all things. So that's why I just even including I mentioned my paper over there. Yeah.
What is this failure to satisfy citation?
I did satisfy.
No, you wrote down failure to satisfy citation 3 different times. What's that about?
Maybe I just missed a court date or late sometime due to financial issues my time,
What was the driving without insurance in 2011? What happened in that case?
Also, it expired my my insurance. That's why I should renew my the insurance. The car by police give me a ticket.
Thank you. Candidly, I don't know for sure what to make of this. The second application has 16 different things listed, and the first one has 3. The most important, it sounds like, though, was or what brought us here today, I think, was the appearance maybe that he failed to disclose the domestic violence arrest and disposition, but apparently he did on the original one from 2012. I don't understand exactly about the 3 years. We're going to the Department of Safety with the license for 3 years, but maybe that's all they gave him regarding traffic citations, and he tried on the second application to fill out more.
It looks like if you study the background check in his second application, it looks like he just went off of that list and wrote them all down.
Okay. But at least he did disclose the domestic violence assault charge from 2012 in the original
What
application.
would be the most serious?
Is there a representative from Green Cab here?
Mr. Fields, when your office receives applications, and even if they are traffic violations, if they're not disclosed, does your office deny the application automatically?
Yeah, the ordinance, if it says failure to make a full, on the application itself, failure to make a full disclosure of all arrests and convictions will result in the denial of your application, and that's reflected back in the ordinance.
And how long do you have to wait before you can reapply and get it approved if you come back and disclose?
The practice has always been they could reapply. They could reapply and come back to the commission, because the commission's not denying, staff is denying. If the commission denies, depending on which of the different people, different organizations and companies we regulate, there are certain time periods that they have to wait to come back if you deny. You had one of those last month. Staff denial is a little different because staff does not have authority to deny for a period of time, at least not in the record or in the taxi cab ordinance.
I think that's good.
And he applied originally in July and then reapplied in August.
Mm-hmm.
I'm asking these questions because I'm trying to determine if he's already, in essence, gotten feedback from us that his application was unacceptable and denied, and now he's coming back a second time
Right.
cleanly to show, here are all my citations, please approve them.
Exactly. Typically, we counsel if a driver applies and there's a failure to disclose, we counsel them on first of all what they failed to disclose and the gravity that the commission accepts that, and then obviously ask them to appear so they can explain why they failed to include it.
Is there a motion regarding Mr. Janka's second application for a taxi cab driver application? I will add, Mr. Janka, I think the greatest pause that makes me question whether or not to grant a driver application or grant a driver permit for Mr. Janka is not so much the failure to disclose the citations, the traffic citations, but the disclosure of the domestic violation arrest and conviction in April 2012. So it's not so much that he didn't disclose that information as the fact that it occurred. And so that makes me question, although I don't have a vote in the matter, whether or not we should approve a taxi cab driving permit for someone who has been convicted of assault, domestic bodily injury in the last 18 months.
And I will just add to that we also don't have a company that's here present saying that they're going to supervise him, where we would have the ability to even put him on probation for a while and have him be watched.
We technically would not issue the permit until a company would agree to, they'll have to furnish paperwork from the company saying the company will take them on. The company affiliation is required on the face of the permit.
Okay.
So even if it's approved, we would hold it until a company authorized it.
Could I ask Mr. Janka a couple more questions real quick?
Absolutely.
Mr. Janka, could you come up here a second? Who is it you're alleged to, who is it you pled guilty to assaulting in 2012?
Jefferson County Courts.
I'm sorry?
Jefferson County Courts.
Yeah, who was the victim?
My wife.
Your wife. Are you still married to her?
Yeah, we're together right now. We saw the situation, everything, you know.
All right.
So, I just have the court, everything. Court
Did
was,
she show up in court?
yeah, she showed up.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you worked out a plea bargain, right?
Yes, sir.
And you pled guilty?
Yes, sir.
All right. Did you have a condition of attending battered intervention program?
What's it called? Anger management.
Anger management.
Yeah.
All right. How many weeks did you have to go to that? 26 weeks. So every other week you were going to that.
Every Saturday,
Did you go?
go and pay $25 for a teacher. I have a certified paper from them, pay court costs, everything, and that's for separation.
And during this year you were on probation, were you living with your wife?
No, but she asked the court, to report again to leave for the
Restraining order?
yes, sir.
Okay. So has that been lifted?
Lifted, I made after 2 weeks. And I have everything.
All right. Are you back together?
Yeah, we together right now.
Children?
So we in school right now.
Okay. How long you been married?
Since 2008.
All right. You did your anger management classes.
Yes, sir.
You paid your court costs.
Yes, sir.
Did you get off probation successfully?
Yes, sir.
All right. Who was your probation officer?
Christopher Sharp. Because I call right now.
They required you to call in every time? Or call in once a week or something?
Well, he just told me, make sure you go to every Saturday, and otherwise that's it. They contact together.
Did you learn anything from what did you learn from those classes? The anger management classes. What did you learn from them?
How you just any woman and everybody, you know, respects and you can't get into the force.
What did you do to your wife that caused her to get a warrant against you?
Say again.
What did you do to your wife that she went and got a warrant against you in 2012?
To her,
Yeah, what'd you do?
but, I apologize.
What?
I apologize.
No. What did you do that caused you to be charged with domestic violence?
We just arguing, and she just tear my t-shirt. I just pushed her, that's it, and she called the police. She cried, and then the police came, and I tried to explain. Police came, you didn't give me a chance to speak, so take me to.
But if it's not aggravated, it's not disqualifying offense.
Thank you. Did she have to go to the hospital?
It's not that much harder than just.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions? I've been advised by Metro Legal that if it's not an aggravated assault, it is not a disqualifying offense. I think we still have the discretion as to whether to grant it or not. But I wanted to hear whether he completed the anger management or the battered intervention programs and whether he learned anything from it.
That's good. Would you like to make a motion, Mr. McNulty?
McNally?
McNally, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Is there there's no motion on the table right now?
No.
Well, I'm going to step out and make a motion that we approve Mr. Janka with I understand there's a proviso, though, that he will not have a permit till a company steps forward and says they will supervise him. That's my motion.
A second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Mr. Jonker, you do have a driver permit, but it is conditioned on you getting employment with the taxi company who will vouch for you, and you'll be on probation for a period of time.
I gave it to them the paper Monday.
I don't think probation is part of it.
And I put to the Linda and the form as Monday and the
Well, if you'll talk to Mr. Fields and you can get him that paperwork.
She's going to find out. I don't know. They need a cab and walk up to the office. I don't know.
All right. Next item on the agenda, we have an other passenger vehicle for hire application by Lisa Murray. Mr. Fields.
Miss Murray had to be out of town today. You recall she missed the last meeting. She called in yesterday. She's actually had to be out of town on a surprise work assignment and asked that we defer it till she can be present.
All right. Do we need a motion to do that?
I move to defer Ms. Murray's application.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next item on the agenda is an application by Value Parking LLC for a booting permit.
The ordinance requires that the commission actually approve this application. Staff does not have the authority. Advise Mr. Keith Moorman, who I think is still, I hope he's still present. The application's in order, and he's present if you have any questions. Otherwise, the staff suggests we approve it.
I'm new here, and I just would like to move explanation as to what we're approving when it's called a booting permit.
Booting permit is the newest industry that you regulate. Anybody that any public or private lot not owned by the government is required, if they're going to do the booting, is required to make application. And that application, certain things they're required to do, including signage issue on each of the parking lots, the amount they can charge to have the boot removed, the time in which, how much time they have in order to respond to that lot to remove the boot. So very much like some of the other things that the commission is responsible for, you're required to consider it, and only you can approve it or disapprove it.
And the boot can only go on after a certain number of violations.
Actually, the Metro Council, and the Metro Council allows on the first violation.
But Mr. Moorman submitted after the second on his documentation.
Well, he can certainly choose to do that on the lots that he has. He could give them the benefit of the doubt and give them the
It
break.
just passed.
It was just passed in the last 2 months.
In a-
A new
The amendment
change of the
to
law.
it?
Yes.
Okay, so it got
That's
amended,
not-
okay. Because the original
First
was,
offense, you get the boot.
The original was actually on the third one. You had 2, and then on the third one.
One size fits all. Thank you.
I make a motion that we approve this application for booting permit.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes, and Value Parking gets a booting permit. Next item on our agenda, we have the proposed ordinance change regarding carriage routes and zones.
This is, and we've talked about this, this does not require a public hearing. It does require the commission to review it. We're actually changing the ordinance we're giving, in a nutshell, what it's doing is giving the staff of the Traffic and Parking Commission authority to either develop zones or routes in which the horses and carriage can operate. At the present time, it's a limited carriage route in the downtown area. With this change, the council will be authorizing and allowing the Traffic and Parking Commission to delegate its authority to staff to allow zones to operate. For instance, you could have a zone that would be from the river to 8th Avenue, from the interstate to the north to Jefferson Street, or to the south, Jefferson Street to the north. You could develop a zone in the Gulch area. You could have a zone in but it would not require additional routes and specific streets. There may be the Traffic and Parking Commission staff, Commission or its staff could determine there's some streets that they could not operate on. For instance, anything above 35 miles an hour they can't operate on now. So we would exclude those sort of streets on the outset, but what it would do is give them a larger area to operate in. It would also hopefully reduce some of the congestion that is in the downtown area now. Staff would recommend you approve.
There's a point of clarification. All we're doing is basically looking at this because the council is going to be the body that adopts this or not.
I will be invited to council on your behalf, and they will say, has the Transportation License Commission, do they have a position?
Had any opposition to it?
Not that I'm aware of. We've certainly, it's been something we've talked about with folks. Again, it's not a public hearing, but it's something we've talked with carriage operators for months. And I've not had anyone say this is a bad idea. The meeting's always open to you, allow anybody to speak. You're not required to have a public hearing on this, but you certainly can hear from anyone you choose to.
Well, Mr. Fields, it sounds like there's no opposition to us approving this change in the ordinance, but I don't want to overlook anyone. So if there's anyone in the audience that would like to speak on the issue in opposition, you may. If you could please introduce yourself.
My name is Sarah Beth Williams with Cumberland Care Stores, which one it is. I guess I'm a little bit confused because I'm not sure exactly what you're voting on as the zone, if you're doing it before it goes to the council. But I'm not really understanding that because if you all are approving something before it goes to before the council for the zone, I would like to add that if you approve the zone, it would really help our companies. I mean, what I'm saying is from Riverfront all the way to Music Row would be great. But
You're
right
not
now,
opposing it.
I'm not opposing it, but I'm just saying that there's a Ferris wheel on our route tonight. So we can't even operate on our route anyway. So we have to change it.
Basically, what this does, it authorizes the Traffic and Parking Commission staff to be able to develop a zone. There are no zones recommended. We're not looking at any particular zones yet. That would be a Traffic and Parking Commission and staff decision.
Okay, so no decision is being made at this moment, right?
We're not making a decision about the change. Mr. Fields is anticipating that Metro Council will ask what our opinion is of the matter, and that's what we're talking about today.
Well, where my confusion was going was it said proposed changes to ordinance. So what, are we doing a specific ordinance or is this just a general?
There would be a specific ordinance change if the Metro Council approves it.
Okay, so does that mean just our route change to zone? Or does that mean the moratorium too?
It delegates establishing the routes and zones to the Traffic and Parking Commission.
Okay.
So,
They will have the authority.
So they could essentially take care of a problem like you have, where if they know, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if they know ahead of time that these streets are going to be shut down, they could say, okay, you can now go on this street instead.
Right. Okay.
And that's essentially a portion of what we're talking about.
Okay. I wanted to make sure that
Yep, no.
I was clear on all the avenues, that not just one specific thing was being looked at, but the moratorium too, because that is a big issue that we were talking about last month. and I was wanting to know that hopefully that would be,
That particular issue is not a part of this. What this really, all it simply does, it gives them the ability to rapidly deal with an issue rather than have to wait for a meeting to do it. So in other words, they can create a zone, and then they can say, for instance, tonight, if you wouldn't be able to operate on wherever the piece of equipment is. What this will do is just create a larger zone. It would give them the ability to create a larger zone. This doesn't create any zones or any routes. It just gives, it's, all of the ordinance itself would just give it would allow them to have zones and routes or routes. They don't
so
have to
we
use
won't be
both.
able to operate in a different place tomorrow.
No, this has nothing to, this is still an ordinance change that the council has to approve.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Fields, is there a motion that needs to be made with regard to the proposed ordinance change by the commission?
Another, either,
Recommending it.
I move recommendation.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes to recommend the ordinance change.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Fields, is there any other business that we need to attend to today?
not that I'm aware of.
I make a motion to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion